This week, I took what I consider another dog, a failed painting, one that just didn't speak to me and sat in the corner for a long time. And with the inspiration of something that I had collaged into my sketchbook, I decided to completely transform it. So a lot of people would ordinarily gesso the entire piece and start over. I really love to include my older paintings down in down deep inside a newer painting. I always feel like when I look at a painting when it feels finished, if I can see a history of things that have gone on before, it adds a little bit of mystery. Now, you're about to see a transformation, but I'm going to give you a sneak peek into the project as it currently stands. I do not consider this finished, but it's a far cry from what it was when it started out. So check this out. Now, this is the inspiration that I'm working from. I'm not trying to depict this exactly, but I collaged this from some painting that I did in my abstracting the landscape, where I make a lot of marks and really play with color and rip them up or cut them up and reposition them in my sketchbook. I've done this in past Studio Chronicles, and I'll continue to do this. And I'm not trying to depict that, but I'm trying to pull inspiration from this. And this is where I am so far. It is a little rough around the edges, and I just don't consider it finished, but I consider it well on the way to completely transforming a piece that came before. And hopefully sometime soon I will feel like I can finish it. So here I am checking this idea out, and here is what I consider a dog. This painting just never quite made it for me, and I'm looking it over to see if there's anything I want to salvage. But what I really want to do is just start over. Admittedly, some of the colors that I'll be using are similar colors to this old painting, but this, I never could quite crack this into shape, and I'm quite delighted to just start painting at it and scraping and playing. This is what I take pleasure in. I always sort of chuckle to myself because what starts out as a landscape or a floral could end up as a portrait. Who knows? I mean, with this type of opaque paint, you can go a lot of directions. You can just keep on painting on the same canvas. A friend of mine told me you can do this until it's so heavy that you can't carry it around anymore, and that's one way to decide something is finished. That's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but so I'm continuing to revise this. I'm using, I believe, gesso here, some white gesso, but I'm applying it with a palette knife and allowing some paint to show through it. I'm not after complete opacity here. I'm just revising. After a certain point in time, doing this allows me to completely let go of what existed before. There's also a buildup of texture just because there is more than one layer of acrylic paint, and I often paint with tools like this palette knife, which gives multiple textures to the canvas. I'm mixing some sap green, dark sap green. This is Nova paint that I'm mixing in here. I'm using a Chinese calligraphy brush just to give it a little bit different texture from the palette knife. I'm working kind of wet into wet doing this. I have transferred this Nova paint into squirt bottles. They're similar to ketchup bottles, and this is a wonderful way to apply paint to a surface. I don't have to put it out on a palette. I can just go directly to a surface and squirt it, and I'm working wet into wet so I can mix right on the canvas. Now this is an interesting paint. I haven't gotten these out in a long time, but the brand here is Derivan, Derivan Matisse paints. They come in a little square bottle, and I painted with these years ago and then kind of stuck them away and got started with Nova paints. But this week I've gotten them out because I sold a painting this week that had been painted with these paints, and I realized I've had it on my wall for some years because I like it so much, and I like it so much because it's painted with this particular paint, which dries in a very matte consistency. So I'm pulling this out again. This paint is called background paint. It can be used as gesso, colored gesso, or it can be mixed with white gesso or black gesso to create unique colors. But that's why it dries so flat. I'm just playing here, mark making. Some of these colors on the canvas get very, very dark, but that's okay. That's a starting point, and because I'm working with opaque colors, I can paint light over dark. That's as a watercolor painter, that's a real treat. I'm painting with the bottle once again, sort of drawing as I squirt, moving the paint around. This is a fun way to apply paint. I skip the brush and I skip the palette knife and I just squirt it on. At this point, I've decided, since those calligraphy type marks were created with the bottle in a dark, dark green, on the screen here it almost looks black, but I decided to follow that up with some Hansa yellow, and this is going to really make for some much brighter green. It's a little shrill, but that's okay. We're having fun. Now we have completely let go of that underpainting, and it feels good. I don't know exactly where this will end up, but it so far is an improvement in my opinion. This painting feels like an adventure. We should have a good time when we're painting. We should be having fun, and I do. I always have fun. And if it starts to feel like work, I am apt to change to a different painting or quit for the day, because after all, I think that when you are enjoying your process, it shows up in your painting. And if you are agonizing over something and really struggling, I think that shows up as well. So I'm going back, looking once again at what inspired me here. I look at it and then I let go and get involved in the process. I don't want to become completely obsessed with that piece, but when I look at it, it does give me ideas. So I think I put some phthalo blue paint into this. There was blue mixed with the green in the sketch, and I really liked that effect. But on here, it's gone pretty dark for this layer. Yet these dark, larger areas, these larger shapes of dark, are in real life, they're rich in color. And I kind of like the size. It's a different size. I had a lot of small bits going on, and this gives me a larger shape, which appeals to me. Going back in with yellow to brighten things up a little bit, and because I'm working with phthalo, it gets pretty saccharine green, not a very believable color that you might see in the garden. But you know, these colors can always be adjusted a little bit if I don't like them. One thing you can do, I added some magenta to some of those greens and it grayed them down a little bit. And I did want to eventually aim toward using the magentas. I waited to later in my painting process to add magenta. I'm adding some white mixed in with some of this wet color, which ends up being a bit gray, which is nice. I really like the blends here, the blends of color. Blending right on the canvas, wet into wet. It's an interesting process. I like it. Obviously, I have sped up this video, but in real life, I was working quite fast, keeping the energy going. I did intend to get back into the magenta, so here I go. Of course, white gesso or white paint into the magenta is going to get things pinked up quite a bit. And I don't want that to overpower the painting. I really am glad for the weight of the darks in contrast with the brightness of the magenta. So you saw me put white and magenta on my brush. I kind of wanted both of them to show up from the same application. I really like to blend on the canvas or substrate. I decided that I wanted some white. I really like the white of the paper on that collage piece, and I think white is nice to have as a resting point in a painting. A lot of times when we're painting in acrylics, or oils for that matter, opaque mediums, we don't allow white very often. We cover that up with maybe some high values, some lights, but sometimes it's nice to go right in and add white. Wow, adding white there mixed with the phthalo blue, and I started picking up blue, and I just decided to go with it. It was there, but it was inky dark because it was pure right out of the bottle. And here you have it. This is where this painting stands at the moment. So I don't feel like this painting is entirely resolved, and I'm hoping that when I circle back around and take a look at it, I may be able to crack it into shape so that it feels like it's finished. And maybe it won't, and maybe it will. And that's always the case with paintings, for me anyway. I work on several at a time. You can see I've always got lots and lots of things going on. And next week, this coming week, I plan on getting some big tools out and some big canvases because I have some ideas for some abstracts, and I'm looking forward to that. And who knows, in painting at those big canvases, maybe they will give me some ideas of how to resolve this one back here. But thank you for staying with me, and I hope that you come back and check out my weekly Studio Chronicles. I post them every Thursday midnight. I don't stay up and do that. I schedule them to be released Thursday at midnight. And if you click subscribe, you will see my videos in your feed. But if you hit that little bell, you will actually get an email and be reminded when I post new videos. Sometimes I post some shorts and things in between the Thursdays. I did this week. I shared a watercolor that lasted less than a minute. Of course, I sped it up, but I did a watercolor. So check out my short videos. They're a lot of fun to post. They're a lot of fun to make. And you only watch them for a minute and then move on to something else. Anyway, thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time.